Hi, I'm Keeli Crewe, and I was the public education coordinator for Tennessee Donor Services in the early 90s with Charles, Deirdre, and my roommate at that time, Tracy Robertson Hedrick. When I first joined the TDS team, I learned so much from Charles about the history of transplant. He not only pioneered the Emory Physician's Assistant Program, but also the U.S. transplant movement. He truly loved the medical and science aspects of transplantation, but also respected and deeply appreciated the human and compassion elements involved with the donor and recipient relationship. He was the senior transplant coordinator in our office and our office manager. I loved his sense of adventure and I loved his love for driving the open road. He often drove cross country to transplant conferences nationwide to discover new places, and then he would document them beautifully in photos which graced our office walls. I appreciated that Charles was always comfortable with the ladies, and I loved that he enjoyed lunching with us girls whenever they weren't busy or tied up with education in the hospitals or with an organ donation case. He would share great stories with us at lunch with a dose of his dry humor and his signature sly smile. Right there it is. If you know, you know. Today I'm delivering sentiments from one of his early recipient families. The transplant case happened before I was hired, but I was very familiar with the baby Olivia story of her heart transplant. I was fortunate to meet both families involved later, and thanks for giving donor and recipient family reception at the Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga. The Urkelas flew in from the Pacific Northwest, and the Mays family drove over from Murphy, North Carolina to share their story and their bond through transplant. Nothing is more powerful in proving the positives and affirmation and the benefits of organ and tissue donation and transplantation than when these families share their personal stories. This is a letter from all of us from Sherrie Spencer Simmons, the mother of the heart transplant recipient, Olivia. Charles first came into my consciousness when I was waiting for a heart transplant for my daughter, Olivia Mays. I was still pregnant, but we knew she had hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and we had decided to travel from North Carolina to Loma Linda, California for her surgery. Charles was affiliated with the Tennessee Donor Services locally in Chattanooga, so he really didn't have to be involved with our situation at all. However, he reached out to us. He was such a comfort during the uncertainty and the wait for Olivia to be born. We went to California, she was born, had the transplant, but sadly died after 5 weeks later. When we returned to North Carolina, Charles was always ready to help us. He generously agreed to help give a presentation on transplantation to our local high school, and he invited us and our donor mom and dad, Martin and Julie Urkela, to be a transplant recipient conference and to speak in Washington, D.C. This is just a small glimpse of from one family into Charles's character. He was a giant of a man, but humble and generous with his talent and time. He will be missed by so many. Rest in peace, Charles. Sherrie Spencer Simmons. And next we have Dale Ellis.
Good afternoon. I am Dale Ellis, Dana's brother, and I've been chosen to read a eulogy sent by Mr. Greg Segal that Fred mentioned earlier. So I'll put this up here so everybody can hear me. I'm sorry. I'm not used to that. So this is from Greg Segal, who met Charles initially through his involvement with Organize, the patient advocacy group focused on systemic reforms to increase patient access to organ transplantation. Greg is their co-founder and CEO, and these are his words. Everyone in this room knew Charles, which is to say everyone in this room loved Charles. I think about that a lot because I didn't realize at first how true that really was. I never doubted Charles was lovable, of course. He was nothing if not lovable. But over the years, I was continually amazed at how much love he had to give, at how much time, wisdom, and humor and guidance he had to share, at how generous he was in sharing his most precious resource, himself and his time, that somehow there was enough of him to fill up so many people who are now filling up this very room. When Charles and I first became close, I knew I had struck gold. We worked closely together on an intense and emotional issue, and I often found myself tired, sad, drained, and otherwise worn out, and I knew I could always count on him for guidance and support, or as I often told him, I called it his Solomonic wisdom. But mostly I called him when I just needed a good laugh. He was remarkably upbeat and good-natured, and could help keep everything in perspective. And mostly, it was so clear that he genuinely cared about me. We moved fast from working together to becoming close friends, and then eventually something that felt much more like family. Since he passed, other friends of his have been reaching out to me, and everyone describes their relationship with him exactly as mine was. I truly don't know how someone can give as much as Charles did, but he was just indefatigable. An endless well, who never wanted anything more than to make your day just a little bit better. That has been what stuck with me most, that he was as supportive of everyone as he was of me. That's just who he was, and I'm sure everyone here today has their own favorite personal memories of a time when Charles helped them push through something hard and helped them laugh, even and especially in tough times. I wrote Charles a handwritten letter about 6 months ago, telling him what an inspiration and role model he was. At the time, I meant it in terms of how he lived. If I were going to write him another card today, it would be about what a role model he was in facing death, too. There's a song I've had on repeat for the last 3 months that has helped me through the grieving process. Lucy by Mount Joy, about a woman named Lucy facing a terminal cancer diagnosis. The song opens, I want to live like Lucy died, living my life wire to wire. Burn up like a star in the northern sky, dreaming only of the light. Dust to dust, what becomes of us? And will I ever be man enough to be the woman she was in life when she knew that she was going to die? When I think about Charles now, I am in awe of how he held his head high to the very end. He never compromised his principles, his personality, his sense of humor, or anything about himself. Meeting him in the final months would have been the same Charles you could have met 30 years ago. I always knew that I could face down anything in my own life because I could call Charles, and some of me was worried that I would lose that when we lost him, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The enduring example of strength Charles left us with inspires me every day. May all of us be as uncompromising in our own selves as Charles was in his, and as supportive of others as Charles was every day of his beautiful life. Right now, I'm going to invite anyone who has any stories or share a memory they want to share to come up and share it with them. But first, I want to share my thoughts real quickly. Again, I'm Dale, Dana's brother, and that's how I knew Charles, right? So he was my brother. It was as simple as that. I knew what he did for a living, and but to me, again, that's just what he did for a living. I didn't really have a sense of a magnitude of what he did or how he did it, and I'm fascinated today by the stories and all the lives and everything that he's done and touched, and I'm amazed. He's a remarkable man. As a brother, I pay attention to how he took care of my sister, and I know that he loved her, and I know that she loved him. And it's amazing, again, hearing the stories that you're sharing with me today. I've never really had to worry about her with him, and she's always been taken care of in the short time they're together. And I know he's always made certain that she'll be taken care of now. He was a great man, evidenced by all these accomplishments and everybody here and the amazing things he has to say. But I know he is also a man who loved her, and he took care of those he loved. So thank you for letting me share that with you. Again, if anybody has anything they want to share or a story they want to share, they can come up. There's a gentleman here coming up now. So thank you.